Welcome to the OK Let's Learn podcast, where we dive into books, stories, people, and tons of different topics. My name is Kevin O'Keefe, and today, let's learn about January. We will rank the top 20 people born in January in history, and we will rank the top 20 moments ever in January. And yes, it's one man's opinion, it's mine, and I know you're going to have some disagreements, but let's start the journey because there's nothing better than thinking, agreeing, and yes, disagreeing. So when I say the top 20 people and moments in history, it's not necessarily most interesting. It's not necessarily the greatest, the best, or the most important because I don't know. It's just too subjective. And yes, it's my opinion here. But we're going to go with the most influential. This is basically meaning that they shaped the world. They changed history. They were significant and they had an amazing impact on people's lives. And again, we're going right up until today and going all the way back to the beginning of time. One more point before we hit the countdown. And this is just commentary, but it's really sad commentary. Unfortunately, throughout history, and you'll see this with my list, and we're going to go month by month. That's my plan. So the beginning of each month, look forward to a ranking of the top moments and the top people each and every month. But here's my point up front, because I want to make it clear, there's not enough women and African Americans on these lists. It's just a sad reality. That's all there is to it. So everything else being equal, I will defer to both of them if there's nothing else that differentiates a candidate. So let's start off with number 20. Born on January 23rd, 1737, it's John Hancock. Yes, put your John Hancock down here. Known for his distinguishing, impeccably written signature on the Declaration of Independence. It's right there in the center. It's bold, and that's who he was. On the eve of Paul Revere riding out to the countryside to warn that the British are coming, it was John Hancock and Sam Adams that the British were after, other than getting all those weapons out in Concord. They wanted to kidnap him. He was one of the leaders in Boston that started everything. He's a founding father, and yes, he was even the president of the Second Continental Congress in 1775, and they chose George Washington to lead the Continental Army. Talk about someone that was influential to the history of the United States. Number 19, born on January 17th, 1942, Muhammad Ali. Yes, the legendary boxer and global cultural icon. Really one of the greatest athletes ever, and a powerful voice for civil rights and standing up for yourself. He was not popular. I remember distinctly growing up in the 60s, him not being popular at all. But isn't it true about famous people? The test of time, very often, what may not be considered important at the time, with years later, can be looked back as, yes, something different, something powerful. And Muhammad Ali is a perfect example. He did not want to go to the Vietnam War. He stood up for protesting against it. And boy, there was a lot of voices, like I said, and I remember it distinctly in my own family. You were either for Muhammad Ali and his stances against the Vietnam, or you were against him. And there were a lot of reasons for both. But nevertheless, he just became, not just in the United States, but over the world, so famous. Number 18, born on January 8th, 1935, Elvis Presley. This is more of a popularity pick to be frank, you know certain people, certain generations, certainly. It's not about looking up names in a history book, but if you know music, you know Elvis Presley. He basically invented the rock and roll genre. That moment that he appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show on TV, this was back when TV in the 50s, everyone was watching. You only had a few channels. And again, you talk about controversial. You were in two camps in the 50s. You thought that he was the most wonderful thing, and this was the younger generation coming up in the 50s, or the older generation. He was not a good influence on young children. But nevertheless, he went on to win multiple awards, tons and tons of top 40 hits, number one singles, and people just adored him. Unfortunately, he lived a tragic life. I'll never forget where I was. I was at a long-distance running camp when I was a sophomore in high school up at Marist College, and a kid came running down the hallway with the newspaper in his hand. Elvis Presley died. It was in August of 1977, August 16th to be exact. Number 17, born on January 7th, 428 BC. Plato, one of the three most influential philosophers going back to ancient Greece. He was the student of Socrates and the teacher of Aristotle. Are you kidding me? His ideas shaped Western philosophy, education, politics, everything going forward for the next 2,000 years. You talk about influential. And again, I know I'm repeating myself here, but a foundational person that really set us as a society in general, as civilizations in general, to being focused on the right things. Number 16, born on January 7th, 1897, Amelia Earhart, the pioneering woman pilot. She was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. She was nothing other than courageous. She loved to explore. She had an amazing life. But tragically, they're still looking for her. She disappeared in 1937 while trying to fly again around the world. And still today, one of the biggest mysteries that's still unsolved. Hopefully one day they will find her. Number 15, born on January 29th, 1737, Thomas Paine, the political writer and revolutionary thinker. He wrote, it could be argued, one of the top two most influential books, pamphlets, pieces of writing, whatever you want to call it, in the history of the United States. Certainly, you could argue it's right there with Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin that ultimately got the word out as to why slavery was so horrible. But listen, a lot of people will argue, historians will say the Revolutionary War and the support that came with the rebels rising up against King George would have never happened if it wasn't for Thomas Paine and writing his pamphlet/book called Common Sense. It went out to all of the colonies at a time where most people didn't read. And here's the point about Common Sense. It was written in a way that people could understand. Even though most people couldn't read, it was read out loud to the common people, the farmers, the bakers, the candlestick makers. You get the point. It was a time that tried men's souls. Thomas Paine, with this particular writing, again, galvanized the people across the 13 colonies that said, you know what, we're going to support us being a new country. And yes, he was the first one that penned the term the United States of America. He lived a fascinating life. He's so overlooked. And talk about a future episode on a fascinating figure. Later in his life, he became very unpopular because he took a stance against religion. He was almost killed over in France during the French Revolution because he took a controversial stance there. And most fascinating of all, and talk about sad, his body, his bones are scattered all over the world, and most people don't even know where they are. Number 14, born on January 10th, 1864, George Washington Carver, a scientist, an educator, an inventor. Talk about, again, influential. He helped improve farming methods and crop rotation. He helped farmers in ways that had never been done before. And he certainly, you talk about peanuts, he was very influential with that particular crop. He developed over 300 uses for the peanuts. And unfortunately, another sad story with comes so often in these tales of famous people, he never patented them. Number 13, born on January 31st, 1919. If you know sports, you know this gentleman, Jackie Robinson. He broke the color barrier in baseball, and it wasn't just sports where he became influential. With the rise of civil rights, with the rise of Martin Luther King Jr., with basically people just looking at our society and people in general and just saying, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. And Jackie Robinson was the perfect person to be in the right place at the right time because he turned the other cheek. The stories of how he was treated, and especially in his early years, as just a player who was trying to hit a baseball with a bat. But he became a towering figure, not just in civil rights, but in basic humanity for all of the ages. Today, his jersey number 42 is retired across the Major League Baseball universe. No one will ever wear that number. Number 12, born on January 28th, 1491, the year before Columbus set sail for this new world, Henry VIII, the King of England. He changed history, not just in England, but for everywhere by breaking from the Catholic Church. You see, he just wanted to get a divorce. But back then, religion and certainly the Catholic Church with the Pope in Rome, they ruled across the board. And he said, you know what? I'm the king. I'm going to get divorced. And yes, he had 6 wives, and only 2 of them survived him. He has a fascinating story, and certainly with the break from the Catholic Church and the rise of the Church of England, creating this new Protestant Christian denomination, certainly that had a huge effect on people in early colonial America that settled in New England, no doubt. Number 11, born January 12th, 1809, Charles Darwin. Again, I know I sound like a broken record, but you talk about someone that was controversial, someone that took a chance, someone that was influential. He developed the theory of evolution by natural selection, basically where we evolved from as human beings. And he was so controversial as a scientist trying to just get to facts, but in a time still this late in the early 1800s, middle 1800s, by the time he developed a lot of his theories, he waited 20 years to publish his ideas because he feared backlash. Number 10, born on January 5th, 1901, yes, a sentimental choice for today's adults and children, Walt Disney. an animator, a filmmaker, an entrepreneur, someone that more than anyone else really makes people happy, certainly here in the United States, but now throughout the world, as many magical kingdoms are not only here, but in Asia, in Europe. Talk about what anybody could do. Where did he start? With a paper and pencil, and he drew a mouse. His name was Mickey Mouse, and he created an empire, one of the most influential entertainment companies, not just theme parks, but movies, television shows, you name it. Walt Disney created an entertainment empire, still flourishing today. Number 9, born on January 29th, 1839, John D. Rockefeller. Who was he? He was an oil tycoon. He was the richest person ever, you could argue, in the world. He started an industry. Ultimately, not only did he become the most richest person in American history, he reshaped modern business, setting up a huge integrated factory in Cleveland, Ohio that brought everything all under one roof. And this is something that cannot be discounted. Starting from the raw materials to the human resources to the factories to the delivery of any particular good. In this case, it was oil. He brought it to the marketplace, and he was a monopoly, which ultimately he had to divest all of his businesses. And yes, today, where do you see his influence? All the different gas stations that are still out there today that came from him. You see the famous Christmas tree in Rockefeller Center. He gave away a lot of his money, and he set the stage really for a lot of the billionaires out there today that hopefully, and thankfully in some cases, do good by society by giving away a lot of their money. Number 8, born on January 1st, 1735, Paul Revere. Yes, he was a silversmith, he was a patriot, and he was famous, as you all know, for warning the colonists that the British troops were coming on April 18th, that night in 1775, to warn the previous person that's on this countdown, John Hancock, and Samuel Adams, some of the rebel rousers early on. And you could argue, again, if he didn't get on his horse with, by the way, 2 other people, Dr. Samuel Prescott and William Dawes, who knows? Our revolution, our fight rising up against King George may never have happened. And again, there's so many what ifs. And yes, in his case, Paul Revere, his house is still there in Boston. He actually also became famous because he ended up distributing the mural, the painting that was made of the Boston Massacre. So again, talk about news getting out throughout the colonies that we need to rise up against King George. But for whatever reason, it is what it is. He was just in the right place at the right time. And he took stances that would affect generations later to come. Number 7, born on January 11th, 1755, a contemporary of Paul Revere, Alexander Hamilton, the founding father, the person that's on the $10 bill, the person that stayed with George Washington by his side and fought with him, and then became the first treasurer of the United States, Secretary of the Treasury. He, more than anyone else, set up a system of government that not only looked at the central federal government as being important, but foundational. He ended up having all the 13 colonies individually, having the federal government assume all their debts. It was a patchwork of 13 individual states that looked selfishly and understandably out for their own interest. A man that was born in poverty, without parents, he rose to the top of this new established country. And tragically, he was killed in a duel with Aaron Burr, and in recent generations has become so popular with the Broadway play entitled simply Hamilton. Number 6, born on January 27th, 1756, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, the classical composer, the musical prodigy. He very simply created some of the greatest music ever written, all done before the age of 35. And yeah, he was such a prodigy. It's almost like he invented that word because he began composing music at age 5. And speaking of 5, number 5 on the list of the most influential people born on January 30th, 1882, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the 32nd United States president. He led the United States through the Great Depression and World War II, the only president to be president 4 times. He was so popular that during a time of crisis, most people supported him. And it's generally agreed upon by most historians that he was the right person to lead us through these horrible times. He's on our dime. He had that famous speech after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. He said, yesterday, December 7th, a date that will live in infamy. And ultimately, he said, let me, first of all, assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. You could argue that we would not be the United States of America if it wasn't for FDR. And fun personal fact, his home up in Hyde Park, New York, was not too far from where I grew up in Poughkeepsie, New York. Number 4, born on January 17th, 1706, the inventor, the writer, the diplomat, the founding father, Benjamin Franklin. Why was he important? He just secured our independence as a diplomat over in France, helping get France to come over onto our side. He helped establish and write up the Treaty of Paris that ended the American Revolution. He shaped early United States society, and just not with politics as a leader, but he was an inventor. Again, you look up influential in the dictionary, and you have to see his picture there. He's on the $100 bill. He invented the lightning rod, the Franklin stove, bifocals, even a flexible catheter so early on. What else did he contribute? Well, he started in Philadelphia the first library, the first volunteer fire department, the first fire insurance company, the first medical school, the first hospital, and yes, the first university, the University of Pennsylvania. Number 3, born on January 6th, 1412, Joan of Arc. You talk about advancing the climate, the cause of women in society. She was a French military leader and a national hero. She helped turn the tide in the 100 Years' War. She lived a short life. She was killed at 19, but later declared a saint. An unbelievable life. Someone definitely that's worthy of a future episode. And I don't know how much more influential you can be if you were declared a saint. Number 2, born on January 15th, 1929, Martin Luther King Jr. It's funny, when I'm looking over this list and I'm trying to think of the most influential people, when you think of January, today in our society here in the United States, you think, I really do sincerely believe this, primarily because they gave him a holiday. There's no school throughout our country, most states, not every state, but he was born in January. He's celebrated today as, again, someone that was controversial during his time, but he knew his cause was not controversial. He knew that he needed to stand up for what was not right, advocating for African Americans, advocating for anyone that was downtrodden, that was discriminated against. Martin Luther King, again, so much of his life, tragically, with too many people, ended early. And of course, you talk about the most famous speech in history. I have a dream. I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. So, number 1, the most influential person, in my opinion, of all time, born on January 4th, 1643, Isaac Newton, the scientist, the mathematician. He basically discovered, created the foundation of so much of scientific discovery and math. He discovered the laws of motion and gravity. He helped launch modern science that we know today. And yes, during a time of the plague where people were quarantined, he actually invented calculus. He explained how the physical world works mathematically. You see, before Isaac Newton, people described motion and forces mostly with just throwing ideas out there and actually guesswork. He showed that the universe followed precise mathematical laws. Once you can write nature into equations, you can predict it. He had this single shift that changed everything. His laws of motion still govern everyday life today. They explain why cars move and stop, why rockets launch, and why planets stay in orbit. Engineers today, pilots and scientists still use Newton's laws today, all these years later. And the big one, right? The apple falling from the tree, hitting his head. Well, he discovered that gravity was a universal force. He realized that the same force that makes this apple fall also controls the motion of the planets and the moon. This was revolutionary. Earth and space ended up following the same rules. This idea helped unite science all together into one system. And like I said, he changed how humans think about knowledge. He showed that the universe was all in order, laws could be discovered, and experiments in math, they actually matter. This mindset set up the scientific revolution, and yeah, I know I'm going on, but you cannot discount everything that he was able to bring to society. One man. Ultimately, the Industrial Revolution and all the advances that still occur today wouldn't really be possible if it wasn't for Isaac Newton. He didn't just explain the universe, he gave humanity the tools to understand it. That's why his influence is still everywhere, centuries later, right up until today. Now, I know you're thinking, I missed somebody I didn't include on the list. Well, there were a lot of honorable mentions, so quickly to go through a lot of them right now. Montesquieu, Rasputin, Benedict Arnold, Edgar Allan Poe, Francis Bacon, Stonewall Jackson, Douglas MacArthur, Lewis Carroll, Louis Braille. You've got Al Capone, Betsy Ross, and yes, even Richard Nixon. Remember, it's not about good or bad. It's about influential. It's about people that we still remember today throughout our history. But I know a lot of you, like I said, may disagree. Let me know your thoughts. Who did I miss? Who did I not rank appropriately? Reach out to me at kevmok21@gmail.com. And actually, in most podcast platforms, you'll see right under the description of the title of the podcast, you'll see send a text. That's an easy way you can reach out to me as well. So until next time, have fun and keep learning.